Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about Magic, Commander, and anything else while I try and drag this whole mental health thing back to where it's supposed to be. Now, today I want to touch on a couple of decks that I'm trying to build out right now, and then I'll jump into a deck that I just finished putting together in a bit. So, as you know, the Marvel superhero set is now out in the public. And while there are so many different options for decks, I'm trying to limit myself to only building one or two at a time. And I'm currently looking at three. The one that is the farthest from conception is the Scarlet Witch. Uh, yeah, like I have the inkling of an idea for that one. Uh, After that, I have Thor Odin's Son, which is a concept at this point. I haven't even looked into how I want to do it yet, but I have my Adelies the Cinder Wind deck, which is very much a tempo aggro deck, and I feel like this would be the same thing but in Boros, where it's just, land your commander, keep up 12 protection spells, and then just go ham on one person at a time. That's Sied. That's another thought I have currently. And then there's the one that I almost have done, but I'm maybe 10 cards away from figuring out how I want to round out the deck. And that's Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I have most of what I want for in here. There's a few of the more expensive ones that I don't have in here. And it's a matter of figuring out what non-land cards I want. I had this thought of doing all of the talismans or all of the signets, whichever ones I could find as I went through my stuff. And so far, I found more talismans than I did signets, but I also have, the green ramp spells, like 3 visits, Nature's Lore, stuff like that. But I didn't want to lean super heavy on uh, ramp spells because there's a lot of other things I want to work into the deck. So uh, I'm looking for a good balance of rocks to spells for ramp. Uh, of notable, note, this deck will be my Infinity Gauntlet deck when I'm sure the Infinity Gauntlet comes out eventually. Because I did pull a foil Mind Stone in my pre-release, and so I was like, well, we want to be able to reset Nick Fury's power-up ability, so sure, the Mind Stone makes sense in there. And I also maybe sprung to get the Soul Stone, and I'm just waiting for that to come in. That was not cheap, but that said, that's kind of where I am as far as Marvel decks that I have given any thought to. Uh, Other than that, there's two other decks that are kind of on the back burner right now, and that is the Scorpion God. I've kind of been piecemealing together a little bit for the past couple of weeks, and I have a second copy of Aragorn the Unifier, which is the 4 mana Aragorn, And I was looking through some stuff, and I just had this random thought of, there are a lot of multicolored legendary humans. And so that's kind of the direction that one's going in. Again, at this point, it's kind of just a pile of stuff, but it will play a lot different to how my other Aragorn deck plays, which is mostly charms. So it's where I don't know. I just had a bunch of stuff sitting around that I wasn't using, and it seemed like a decent idea. But that said, I think I'll take a little break here, and then when I come back, we're going to talk about the deck that I did finish, at least version 1 of, and that is the God deck, the Jeskai God deck. So I will be right back. And we're back. Now, I do want to start this off again by saying I do not do exhaustive deck reviews on the podcast. I mostly just try and do like a snapshot of like 10 to 20 cards and like why I picked them and stuff like that. Now, in today's case, I think I might have a few more cards pulled aside, but we'll get into it when we, get into it. So, first up, our commanders do have a partner, father and son, and they are Kratos, Stoic Father, 2, a red and a white for a 4/4 God Warrior. Whenever you attack with one or more gods, and whenever a god dies, you get an experience counter. At the beginning of your end step, put a number of +1/+1 counters on target creature equal to the number of experience counters you have. There was a through-hole thought of sticking all of the things that care about experience counters into here, and I did not end up going with that route. But after that, we have Atreus, Impulsive Sun, 1, a blue and red for a 2/4 God Archer with Reach, and for 3 and tap, draw a card for each experience counter you have, then discard a card, and Atreus deals 2 damage to each opponent. So my earliest thoughts for this was before the Marvel set came out. And I was like, well, there's all of the Theros gods, there's all of the Amonkhet gods, and so on and so forth. And in the end, I kind of just came up with a good mix of gods from everywhere, minus the really expensive ones, because I didn't want to shell out, $30, $40 for a single, god card that didn't necessarily fit the themes. And so, in no real order, I'm just going to kind of go through the ones I have pulled aside and why they're in there. So, first up, we have Kratos, God of War, which is red, red, red for a 2/3 God Warrior with double strike. All creatures have haste, and at the beginning of each player's end step, Kratos deals damage to that player equal to the number of creatures that player controls that didn't attack this turn. So he is mostly in here because he is going to move games along and is, relatively not that hard to cast because red is our most uh, plentiful color, followed by white and then blue, kind of bringing up the rear. But yeah, after that, the other one I want to talk about from that universe's beyond stuff was Surtur, Fiery Jotun, which is 3 red for a 5/5 giant god warrior with trample. And whenever you cast a historic spell, Surtur, Fire, or Jotun does 3 damage to any target, which is just everything. And then there was one I added mostly because I always forget that it's technically a god. And that's Ilharg the Raiseboar. 3 red for a 6/6 boar god with trample, and whenever it attacks, you can put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Return the creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. And then whenever it dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you can put it into its owner's library, third from the top. So yeah, the big boar is a god, and so I was reminded of that when I just did a Scryfall search of gods in the Jeskai color identity. But moving forward, next up we have Jeru and Hazaret, which is 2 red, for a 5/4 human god. And as long as you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand, they have vigilance and haste. And whenever they attack, you look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may exile a legendary creature card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Until end of turn, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So this is just a good way to sneak in gods, basically. It does not have a couple of the keywords you would like to see on something like this, which are, flying or indestructible. But, we do what we can with what we have. And then from there, it's just kind of going through a pile. So, first up, we have Thor, Asgard's Avenger, 2 red for a 4/4 God Warrior Hero with flying. If another source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent opponent controls, it deals that much damage +1 instead. And then Thor Odin's Son, 3, a red and white for a 4/4 God Warrior Hero with flying, vigilance, prowess. After that, we have Optima, Origin of Oblivion. It is a 5 mana 4/4 God with flying. And whenever it attacks, put a blight counter on target land. For as long as that land has a blight counter on it, it loses all land types and abilities and has tap, add, colorless. It also says whenever you tap a land for colorless, add an additional colorless. Next up, we have God Eternal Kefnet and Oketra. So, Kefnet is 2 blue for a 4/5 zombie god with flying, and you may reveal the first card you draw each turn as you draw it. Whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery card this way, you copy that card and you may cast the copy. The copy costs 2 less to cast. When it dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you can put it into its owner's library, third from the top. And Oketra is 3 white for a 3/6 zombie god with double strike. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. And again, when she dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you can put it into its owner's library, third from the top. Next up, we have Oketra the True, which is 3 and a white for a 3/6 god with double strike, indestructible, and can't attack or block unless you control at least 3 other creatures. And for 3 and a white, you can create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with a vigilance. After that, we get the Locust God, 4 red and a blue for a god with flying, and whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. And for 2, a red and a blue, draw a card, then discard a card. When it dies, return to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Kid Loki, which is a single blue for a 1/1 God hero villain that says for each creature you control that you've put one or more counters on this turn has hexproof. And whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Kid Loki. Next up, we have Alrun, God of the Cosmos. 3 blue for a 1/1 god. He gets +1/+1 for each card in your hand and each foretold card you own in exile. At the beginning of your end step, choose a card type, then reveal the top 2 cards of your library. Put all cards of the chosen type into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now, this does have a backside, which is Haka, Whispering Raven. It's 1 and a blue for a 2/3 bird with flying, and whenever Haka, Whispering Raven deals combat damage to a player, return to its owner's hand, and then scry 2. So it's meant to give you an early game thing before you play him. I don't know. Haven't put much thought into how I would be handling, those kinds of things. Next up, we have Loki, God of Mischief, which is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 God, Sorcerer, Villain. Whenever a player or permanent becomes the target of an ability you control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once. This plays pretty nicely off of Kratos' ability to dump counters on a thing on the end step, because that would still, draw us a card that turn. Next up, we have Helvar, God of Battle. 2 white for a 4/4 god. Creatures you control that are enchanted or equipped have double strike. And at the beginning of each combat, you may attach target or equipment attached to a creature you control to a target creature you control. Now, this one will most likely only ever see the second side, which is Sword of the Realms. 1 and a white for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has vigilance. And whenever equipped creature dies, return it to its owner's hand, and it equips for 1 and a white. Yeah, I don't have a ton of equipment in this deck. It's really just his backside, and then another one that I'm not talking about its backside. Yeah, that sounds a little dirty. Anyway, next up we have a god that I did not know existed because I was not the biggest fan of this set. But that is Hazaret Godseeker. 1 and a red for a 5/3 god with indestructible haste and start your engines. You can pay 1 and tap it to give target creature with power 2 or less unblockable. And Hazaret can't attack or block unless you have max speed. Next up we have Perforos, God of the Forge. 3 in red for a 6/5 god, indestructible as long as your devotion to red is less than 5. He isn't a creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. And you can pay 2 in red and give creatures you control +1/+0 until end of turn. Next up, we have Perforos, the Blonde's Blooded. 4 and a red for a 7/6 god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to red is less than 5, he isn't a creature. Other creatures you control have haste. And for 2 and a red, you can put a red creature card or an artifact creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Next up, we have Heliod, God of the Sun. And he is 3 and a white for a 5/6 god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5, he isn't a creature. Other creatures you control have vigilance. And for 2 white, you can create a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature token. After that, we have Thassa, God of the Sea, which is 2 and a blue for a 5/5 god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, Thassa isn't a creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. 1 and a blue, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Keranos, God of Storms, 3 blue-red for a 6/5 god. Indestructible as long as your devotion to blue and red is less than 7, isn't a creature. Reveal the first card you draw on each of your turns. Whenever you reveal a land card this way, draw a card. Whenever you reveal a non-land card this way, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Ephara, God of the Polis, is 2, a white and a blue, for a 6/5 god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to white and blue is less than 7, not a creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you had another creature enter the battlefield under your control last turn, draw a card. Iroas, God of Victory, 2, a red and a blue, for a 7/4 indestructible god. As long as your devotion to red and white is less than 7, isn't a creature. Creatures you control have menace and prevent all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control. And then I want to round this out with another version of Heliod, but I didn't bring it up because it doesn't have the same type of texts. But it's Heliod, the Radiant Dawn, 2 white for a 4/4 god. When Heliod, the Radiant Dawn, enters the battlefield, return target enchantment card that isn't a god from your graveyard to your hand. And then for 3 and a Phyrexian blue, transform Heliod, the Radiant Dawn, activate only as a sorcery. And it does remind you that Phyrexian blue can be paid with either blue or 2 life. And it flips into Heliod, the Warped Eclipse. It is a 4/6 Phyrexian god. You may cast spells as though they had flash, and spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card your opponents have drawn this turn. So, does he super duper fit into what I'm doing with the deck? Maybe not, but he's, a god with indestructible that can turn sideways. So, whatever. But yeah, that's kind of it. Nice little spread of like multiple gods from different locations. And yeah, I don't know. my first voyage out with it kind of did work the way I thought it was going to. And so far, I'm happy with that. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going to call it for now. So I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulvey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.